members of the media, members of our faith community, members of law enforcement, members of our nonprofit groups dedicated to a peaceful world with less hate. There is no place for hate or hate crimes in this community. This morning, law enforcement from all over Harris County, along with our communities of faith and their leadership, stand unified in resistance to violence against places of worship and people who go to worship there. Following the hostage taking of 4 people at Congregation Beth Israel in Colleyville, Texas, just a few days ago, which followed the 2018 murder of 11 worshipers at the Tree of Life synagogue in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, we turn our attention to our Jewish community today. But we recognize that our Jewish community is not the only community of faith that has endured hatred, destruction, and violence. The Muslim community and, of course, black parishioners in churches across America have felt the increased violence and hate of a divided country. The 2 violent acts that I began with were driven by anti-Semitism and hatred directed at Judaism and Jews. The crime victims were targeted simply because they were Jewish. And the crimes were meant to do more than just hurt the people they hurt. They were meant to instill fear in all of our communities, but especially the targeted ones. This is why hate crimes pose a greater threat to public safety than any individual criminal could do, motivated by greed or drugs or something else. Hate is meant as a symbolic crime. And when a person is targeted simply because they're part of a group or an ethnicity or a gender or an age group, it's a symbolic violence that is intended to instill fear in the rest of that group. Today, we are joined by an interfaith community. We are pleased to announce that the District Attorney's Office has been joined by a faith council. Why did I call together a faith council? Because we need God. Because there is too much violence in our city, our county, our country. Because we need one another. And just like the synagogues, the churches, the mosques need law enforcement, we need our faith leaders and our communities of faith. Today we're joined by many from law enforcement. I'd like to introduce each of them with their respective law enforcement agencies. And then we'll do the same for the communities of faith and the nonprofits here, and we will invite other speakers to the podium. Representing law enforcement today from HPD, we have Assistant Chief Ernest Garcia. And would you all raise your hand just so everybody can identify you? Assistant Chief Mike Lee from the Sheriff's Department was not able to join us, but we do have Acting Special Agent in Charge from the FBI, Richard Kaladi. Thank you. We also have his Assistant Chief in Houston here, Nitiana Mann. We're joined by Chiefs of Police, Josh Brewer from the Pasadena Police Department, and also Chief John Stringer, relatively new chief to Baytown. Congratulations, Chief. We're joined by Chief Sam Pena of the Houston Fire Department. We all know that our places of worship are often targeted by arsonists with hate in their hearts. We're joined by Constable of Precinct 1, Alan Rosen. By our friend from Precinct 2, for Jerry Garcia. He's got a representative here. We also, that's Chief Moore. We also have Officer Gainey from Precinct 3. Precinct 4, we have Assistant Chief and old friend John Zitzman. Easy on the old, right? Precinct 5, representing Ted Heap, Sergeant David Hauer. Precinct 7, we have our Constable, May Walker, another dear friend. Christina Garza joins us from the FBI, along with CJ Jones from the FBI. From our nonprofit groups, we have Mark Tubin from the ADL, Anti-Defamation League Southwest Regional Director, and also my dear friend Martin Kaminsky from Interfaith Ministries. And we are also joined by the Jewish Federation. All right, I have your name. Help me here. Thank you. Thank you, Renee, for that grace. And we look forward to hearing about what the Federation is doing in our community. Additionally, we are joined by faith leaders, Father Miguel Solorzano from St. Charles Borromeo Catholic Church. Thank you, Father. Bishop Mike Reinhardt from the Episcopal Diocese. Pastor Scott Jones from, Bishop Scott Jones from the United Methodist Church. Pastor Max Miller, Mount Hebron. Pastor Rudy Rasmus, St. John's United Methodist. And Rabbi Steve Morgan, Congregation Beth Yeshurun. Father Rabbi Oren Hayon, Congregation Emmanuel. Sharik Ghani from the Minaret Foundation. Father Luke Millette from the Diocesan Tribunal. And Renee Barrios. Okay, got it. We also, I think, have Jody Bernstein from Interfaith Ministries. I want to read each of these names, and I took the time of the media, which I know is not generally dedicated to individual introductions, because, who else? Oh, okay, great, the Mexican consulate? Well, please come on up. Our consulates play a tremendous role in this community, so thank you for joining us. We usually don't take time from the media or our schedules to introduce each other, but what this is literally a human shield. While we had hostages taken and we saw what training can do in terms of saving people's lives, I think the idea is resistance to violence, opposition, and absolute preparation. And so I want to thank each of these individuals for joining the District Attorney's Office, for joining law enforcement, and for everything that you do for our communities. We want you to know that we're here for you. I also would be remiss if I didn't mention my own staff. We have two of our first assistants here, Vivian King, Chief of Staff, David Mitchum, Chief of Courts, and Sean Tier, a valued member of our staff who has been present and on the scene for both of the killings of police officers this weekend. The deputy hit by the drunk driver, and also the corporal murdered in Precinct 5. And just before we invite our speakers up, if you would, just take a moment to pray and think of the families of these law enforcement officers that were lost this weekend. Thank you all. At this time, I'd like to invite up Assistant Chief Garcia, FBI SAC, and the Chiefs of Police from Pasadena and Baytown, also HFD San Pena. If you all of our elected constables, if law enforcement would come up, I know each of you have some remarks. Chief, coming up. Constable, our elected constables. Well, you get in the picture anyway. We need the representation of women in law enforcement. And you certainly are that. Chief?
So good morning. Thank you very much for the invitation this morning to be with all our partners and all our community activists and the media also. I'm Ernest Garcia. I'm Assistant Chief for the Houston Police Department over Special Investigations Command. And on behalf of Chief of Police Troy Finner and the Houston Police Department, again, let me thank everyone for being here. Like the DA said, it's most important that we work together. And it's good to see a room here full of our religious leaders here throughout the city of Houston. It's good to see our criminal justice system here, the folks that are responsible for that aspect of our system, and also for our Houston surrounding area law enforcement agencies. It takes a collaborative effort to get not only the violence but it takes the effort to get along with our community and work with our community to take part in trying to get this violence, as the DA says, off our streets. As our hearts are saddened this morning with the passing of the Precinct 5 corporal, along with the Harris County deputy this morning, want to say condolences to the families and know that the Houston Police Department, as well as I know everyone here, has our prayers in thinking about those families and in those agencies. But the Houston Police Department is ready, is now doing everything we can in regards to these faith-based hate crimes. Again, like the DA said, hate crime does not have a place here in the city of Houston, as well as anywhere in the world, for that matter. So we're here to stand by with you, anything we can, just to let you know that the Houston Police Department does have resources now that we do actively investigate these hate crimes that partake in our city, and know that we have resources that you can see as well as you can't see. So just to let you know that we are on top of this, and anything that we can be of use, make sure that you contact us. But again, thank you all for being here, and thank you for inviting the Houston Police Department to be part of this important process in getting the hate crime and also the violence out of this city. So thank you very much.
Acting SAC for the FBI, our federal partners.
Good morning. My name is Rick Collodi. I'm the acting SAC of the FBI. I just want to begin by expressing our sympathy and support for Harris County Sheriff's Department, for the family and the agency and the loss of their Sergeant Gutierrez, as well as to the Precinct 5 Constable's office at the loss of Corporal Galloway. We at the FBI, we never lose sight of the threat that extremists pose to the Jewish community and other religious, racial, and ethnic groups. Members of the faith community should not have to worry about threats of violence at their services. To be targeted at your place of worship, a space meant to be a sanctuary, is among the most heinous acts of violence that can be committed. What happened in Colleyville is a terrorism-related matter in which the Jewish community was targeted. It's being investigated by the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force, and because it's an ongoing investigation, we're unable to provide additional details beyond what's already been released. Preventing acts of terrorism and violence remains the #1 priority of the FBI, as well as addressing our hate crimes as a priority. The work done by the FBI and our law enforcement partners depends greatly upon our community, our relationships, and you, the public. You are some of our most critical partners in an effort to counter violence directed at our places of worship. You are the eyes and the ears in our community, and you are in the best position to recognize when something is not right. If you come across information, either online or within your community, which incites or calls for violence, please let law enforcement know immediately. Preparation and training is essential protecting yourselves. The rabbi in Colleyville credited security training of he and his congregates to help them through the situation and ultimately aid in their escape. The FBI, our partners at DHS, have a tremendous number of resources, both online and directly through the field offices, as well as our law enforcement partners. Public safety is everyone's responsibility, and we at all levels of law enforcement continue to cooperate and share information. We ask you, too, to share information with us, be it big or small, to help us identify and prevent future incidents. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Constable Rosen?
Yeah, I think as we can all see here today that we are all committed from a collaborative effort for the faith-based community, law enforcement, the prosecutor's office, of making hate crimes a priority. So I know that we're working closely with the ADL. I know that when some of these shootings took place, we had about 251 faith-based leaders that came in to talk about security in their individual religious establishments. And it was very powerful. I just spoke with Mark Tobin, and we're going to continue to work collaboratively with the ADL on putting forth some more of this planning that goes into safety and security of when people go and worship. This is a time when people should feel at most with God. They shouldn't be worried about someone coming in and shooting up their religious facility. So we're going to work collaboratively with the ADL. Madam DA, thank you for assembling this group. This is an important group to sit down and continue to dialogue and discuss these important issues. Law enforcement's going to always do what we have to do in order to keep our faith-based community safe. Thank you.
I know it's taking a few minutes, but I really think what these folks have to say is important. Chief Pena, you're up next.
Good morning. My name is Josh Brewer with the Pasadena Police Department. I just want to begin by saying there is no place for hate, particularly in the faith-based communities. One of the things that we've done is increase patrols, particularly the Jewish synagogue that's in our city, as well as other faith-based locations. And again, like it's already been said, one of the most important things is our help and our relationship with the community and the public, and when you see something, that you say something. Thank you.
Thank you all for assembling. The Baytown Police Department also echoes our sympathies to both agencies who have lost officers, both killed and murdered in the line of duty, and we are standing by to support those agencies. No person should feel marginalized because of who they are or because of where they come from or how they choose to worship God. The Baytown Police Department is staffed with professional practitioners of law enforcement services, and we will continue to prepare, to train, and ensure that we take every preventive measure that we possibly can to protect all places of worship in our city limits. We also believe in collaboration, information, and intelligence sharing. Those are some of the things that we've really expanded in the last few months, and we're going to continue to do that, because the very best way to prevent these things from ever happening is to have those relationships at all levels of our community, from our citizens to our organizations, to our law enforcement partners, and to the non-governmental organizations that work in the faith-based community. We stand by to support each other, and we stand by to support the prosecution of anyone who engages in hate-based crimes. Thank you.
Now from our faith-based communities, our rabbis, Hyan and Morgan.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Rabbi Oren Hayon. I am Senior Rabbi of Congregation Emmanuel. I'm very grateful to be with all of you this morning, extremely grateful to the DA and her office for assembling all of you here this morning, and my heart is warmed by seeing so many friends, old and new, from the faith community, from our law enforcement agencies, and from our wider community who are here to express their support, solidarity, and their willingness to stand up for the Jewish community. When the DA's office invited me to say a couple of words this morning, I went and looked into my files, and fortunately I had a lot of material to draw from, because this is the third time in 3 years that we've gathered together to talk about an act of violence exacted against the Jewish community, targeting everyday Jewish Americans who had come to their place of prayer to express their oneness with God and with their fellow religionists. So this is the one place, as you heard already this morning, that we think and we should expect that we can be safe and at peace. And so when the news came out of Colleyville just last weekend, I, like my rabbinic colleagues, the other members of my religious community, were following the news with fear and great sadness, anxiety and trepidation, but not with surprise. This is something that we have sadly come to prepare for. Hopefully not something we have to expect ever again, but it has become a part of the reality of the lived experience of being Jewish in America. And so for that reason, it is extremely heartening to see so many people here expressing their commitment to look out for ours and other minority communities in our city. Every time there is an attack on a minority community, I hope that people of good faith and good conscience can get together to express their support and solidarity, whether we saw this in the case of violence against our black and brown neighbors, against our Asian American Pacific Islander friends, against our LGBTQ community, against those in the Muslim community. Every time something terrible happens motivated by hate and prejudice and bias, I hope that people with good conscience and strong hearts can partner with those who are elected, appointed, and sworn to look out for us, to ensure that, as the DA said, there is no place in our community for hate. I'm going to ask my colleague, Rabbi Morgan, in a moment to talk a little bit about the relationship between the Jewish community and the larger community. But before I do, I want to make sure that I point out that all of us gathered here know that Jews in America recognize that to be a religious minority in America today is not overwhelmingly an experience of peril or danger. But we feel very grateful to live in this country, in this city, and in this community when we have freedom granted to us by our nation's founding documents and by those who are elected and appointed to serve this community, that all of us are here to ensure freedom and security for people no matter how they pray, what they look like, what language they speak, or what their nation of origin is. So I'm here representing in part the faith community. I'm here to express with you my prayer that our conviction will be strengthened, that our vision will be clarified, and that we'll continue to recognize the existence of wickedness and evil in our world, but that our hearts will be fortified to act with strength against crime, because there is no inoculation against hate except for the moral boldness of good people who are willing to stand up for truth and for human decency. Rabbi Morgan?
So my colleague Rabbi Hayon already said a lot of things that I would say. I just want to thank everybody here from all the different law enforcement agencies and from the different faith communities gathering here together today. I think that represents what Houston is really about. It's about people coming together, building bridges, celebrating our common humanity together. And I think that's why it's important for us to do these kinds of events. And I want to congratulate District Attorney Kim Ogg for organizing this event so that we can express as a community that we stand together in the face of hate and bigotry and violence, that we won't tolerate it in our community, that we're going to be opposed to it, and that we're going to build bridges between our communities so we understand each other better on an individual level, on a community level, so that we can tell the people in our own communities why it's important for them not to bear and harbor prejudices against people of other communities. I think if we can break down those barriers, we'll go a long way towards dispelling the kind of crazy conspiracy theories that seem to persist in our world today. And we'll hopefully build a better community for us here in Houston, in Harris County, and ultimately in the United States. Thank you all for coming here.
When it comes to gun violence, terrorism, and acts of hatred, we as faith leaders are in the prevention business. It's our job to form the character of people and to lift up the values of love and inclusiveness and diversity that ought to shape our cities, our county, and the whole state. And yet, when evil acts happen, it's vital that we stand together to condemn what has happened. And so to my Jewish brothers and sisters, as a Christian Methodist leader, I want to say we stand with you and grieve for the terrible event that happened at Colleyville. To our law enforcement agencies, we support you and deeply regret the 2 deaths that occurred this week. We as faith leaders need the partnership of those who are in the justice business. And so we appeal for better support for the district attorney's office, for the police officers, for the whole justice system, that when evil perpetrators do these things, justice needs to be done. So I'm grateful to be one voice among many here on behalf of the United Methodist Church to say we've got to do something to end gun violence and hate in our communities.
I neglected to invite Chief Pena up. Chief Pena does a remarkable job. Thank you for your department, for the safety you provide for all of us. Houston Fire Department saved my own parents' life back in the 2000s, and I just want to thank you on behalf of all of us for all the work that you do for all of us.
Well, thank you, Kim. Thank you, Kim. I want to thank DA Ogg. I want to thank our public safety partners, as well as the faith community for this unified front against this type of hate. The law protects people and the freedom to practice religion free of discrimination and violence. And anyone that attacks a person or a group because of their religious belief is disgusting. On behalf of Mayor Turner, I'm here to commit that the Houston Fire Department is committed to work with our public safety partners. We have some of the most experienced and best arson investigators, cause and origin investigators in the country. And our commitment is to work with our law enforcement partners in the fight against this type of violence. So I want to thank again DA Ogg for your leadership in this and bringing this group together as a unified front against this type of hate crime. Thank you.
Thank you. We propose action, not just words. With that, I'd like to invite up, saying her name correctly this time, Renee Wuzig Barrios from the Jewish Federation.
Thank you very much, District Attorney Ogg, for organizing this event, and we absolutely appreciate the very strong support of all the law enforcement, federal and local, from the outlying cities, the county, the police department, the fire department. It's absolutely heartwarming to see fellow members of faith communities who have joined together with the Jewish community at this time. It's really important that we take these additional steps and that we all partner in a very collaborative way. We all know that anti-Semitism and hate crimes are simply unacceptable. As we have said, all people should be able to practice their religion freely, and the Jewish community, along with all other faith communities, must be safe and secure. Our synagogues, day schools, community centers, religious schools, and other Jewish institutions are the foundation upon which Jewish life is built. While we are proud of the strength and the resilience of our community, we know that we are not immune from outside threats and acts of terrorism, and that these inflict not just physical harm, but emotional trauma on our community. So the Jewish Federation is pleased to announce that we are implementing a comprehensive security approach for Houston's Jewish community that will help keep our Jewish institutions and community members safer. This approach includes hiring a full-time local security director. A generous donor has provided the first 3 years of funding so that we can hire this director in the next few months. This will be a partnership with the Secure Communities Network, which is the official Jewish security initiative that was launched by Jewish Federations of North America, along with the Conference of Major American Jewish Organizations. And we will be continuing to address security needs by offering trainings regarding active shooters, hostage taking, and other things like that. Our last official training was in July 2020, and we want to continue to strengthen that training, and we'll partner with our other agencies such as the ADL, Interfaith Ministries, and other faith communities to do this. We have also connected our Jewish institutions with Homeland Security grant funding and appreciate the importance of that funding and ask our Congress members to stand in strong support of increasing that Homeland Security funding. Those Homeland Security grants are very important for the security of our institutions of faith. So our security director will act as an expert security advisor, liaison, and training coordinator for the community. They will focus on a strategic approach to community security, support, and consultation to all Jewish institutions, and the implementations of training and assessments. They will coordinate with all levels of law enforcement frequently to make sure that we have a coordinated approach. All religions should be able to worship peacefully without incident. This situation is scary, and we stand in solidarity with the community, Jewish and all other faith communities, Christian, Muslim, and all others. As the Federation, we stand to do what we can to move our community from strength to strength and keep it secure. Thank you.
Thank you. And last from the ADL before I close it out. Thank you, Mr. Tobin.
Thank you, District Attorney Ogg. I'm Mark Tobin with ADL. And thank you for gathering us for this very important occasion, and thank you all for being here. I echo all the comments that have been made today, but I also just want to add an important piece to understanding what is happening right now, and that is that there is in our current environment a comfort level for people to express hate, and particularly anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is the world's oldest hate. And it is something that people on the radical left and radical right, I just got those confused from the hands, but it's one thing that they agree on, is that these conspiracy theories that Jews control the world, that Jews are all powerful, it acts like clay in the hands of anti-Semites. Anti-Semitism is clay in the hands of anti-Semites. And it is that environment which these individuals who are here with me today can help lessen. But it's also incumbent upon everyone to ensure that we lower the rhetoric, we lower the talk of conspiracy, we lower the information that dispels hate and conspiracy theories. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Tobin. Members of the media, thank you for your time today. As I close out, as the top law enforcement official in Harris County, yes, as the top law enforcement official in Harris County, law enforcement friends and allies from all over the county came together in a very real way today to pledge additional security, additional support, additional information sharing between communities, and to participate and support in the training that saved lives in Colleyville and hopefully will save lives should we ever have such a situation here. Make no mistake, this community is united to protect our synagogues, our mosques, and all of our places of worship. Law enforcement will find you with both seen and unseen resources being applied to the security of our faith-based institutions. We will find you. So anyone who is contemplating some type of negative violent action needs to understand that the hate crime law is to enhance punishment. That means you will serve more time than others who might commit the same offense, and that the evidence that has frequently been difficult to gather has been made easier by the internet, by cameras, and by the advance of technology. And so motives are not as obscured and not as difficult to prove as they always have been. As a result, since 2017, this office has filed dozens of hate crimes. Fortunately, none of them murders. And that's the record that we want to keep. While we certainly oppose the other crimes that have been committed, we are here to prevent the loss of life today. We want anyone contemplating hate to understand that standing together, law enforcement, the faith community, and the nonprofit community, accountability is inevitable. We will fight to find you. We will fight to arrest you. We will fight to prosecute you. We will fight to hold you with sufficient bail. We will fight to convict you and imprison you. We resist hatred and we shun violence. And again, to our friends in Constables 5 and in the Sheriff's Department, our blessings and our prayers. Thank you all.
Quiero agradecer también yo a la encargada, pues, que ha reunido a todos los que nos hemos reunido el día de hoy, lo que es la policía, los líderes religiosos, la comunidad judía también que está aquí hoy con nosotros. Es muy importante que como líderes religiosos y las autoridades estemos juntos para formar juntos una unidad para poder defender así nuestra comunidad. Quiero agradecerle al District Attorney por habernos convocado a todos y poder juntos apoyarnos, ver líderes de todo lo que es la policía, líderes de diferentes religiones, unidos todos. Vemos a los musulmanes, los judíos, los cristianos, unidos en una sola fuerza, una sola comunidad. Que Dios nos bendiga y nos mantenga unidos para protegernos y apoyar a todo lo que se refiere a las autoridades para poder defender nuestra comunidad. Que Dios nos bendiga.
An unmentioned member of our staff who is very important to all of us, Ruben Perez, Chief of Special Crimes, one of the only prosecutors in this city to have prosecuted hate crimes. He will provide this information in Spanish. Ruben, thank you.
Gracias, boss. Buenos días. Como dice la fiscal D.A. Ogg, me llamo Rubén Pérez, soy el jefe del Special Crimes Bureau y le quiero dar gracias a todas las personas y las agencias que están aquí hoy. Vamos a, como dice D.A. Ogg, vamos a pelear juntos en contra de esas personas que quieren hacer crímenes de odio. Vamos a trabajar codo a codo
con todas las agencias. Vamos a poner más policías en las calles de los lugares de culto para protegerlos. Vamos a trabajar con todas las agencias estatales, federales, con toda nuestra fuerza para pelear en contra del crimen de odio. Como dice D.A. Ogg, si cometes un crimen de odio, las leyes te dan más pena. Si con un crimen, si vas a cometer un crimen, si cometes un crimen de odio, las penas, el rango de castigo se aumenta mucho más. No vamos a tolerar que alguien no pueda ir a iglesia, al mosquite, al sinagoga, cualquier lugar. Como aquí está el representante del cónsul mexicano, también esos son hogares, lugares que vamos a proteger, no nomás, como personas, vamos a proteger edificios, lugares de negocio, todo vamos a proteger eso, porque estamos aquí juntos para pelear en contra del odio de crimen. Todos estamos aquí para ayudarles. Y para la gente que esté allá, si son víctimas de crimen, y estás aquí legalmente o ilegalmente, o llegaste ilegalmente, o llegaste legalmente, te vamos a proteger, porque nuestra Constitución protege a todas las personas en nuestro país. Gracias por todo el soporte, el apoyo que nos han dado para proteger a todas las personas en nuestra comunidad. Gracias.
Thank you all.